Look at your planet. Almost 3/4 is blue. Now imagine every single drop of it vanishes. Not over centuries. In one impossible instant. Where could all that water possibly go? News anchors everywhere would struggle for words. The first thing you'd see is an empty space. It's the largest landscape on Earth, revealed. A place no human eye had ever seen. And that would only be the first surprise. But the empty seabed isn't even the real story. If you're enjoying this so far, quick favor. Hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Because the dry seabed isn't the real danger. The real danger is what stops happening next. It would never rain again. Not one drop. And nearly half the air you breathe would vanish too. To understand why, rewind to the 1950s. Meet Marie Tharp, a geologist almost nobody believed. She plotted thousands of ocean depth soundings by hand. Slowly, a shape appeared that shouldn't exist. A mountain range wrapping nearly the whole globe. She named it the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Her male colleagues dismissed it as flat-out impossible. Years later, her map was proven completely right. Today, that ridge would stretch before your own eyes. Tens of thousands of kilometers, end to end. Longer than any mountain chain on land. And you would be standing right on top of it. Nearby lies something even stranger, a scar in the earth. The Mariana Trench, nearly 11 kilometers deep. Picture Mount Everest dropped inside it. Kilometers of empty space would still remain above the peak. Nobody would dare stand at that edge for long. The walls drop away into total darkness below. This whole world stayed hidden through all of human history. The ocean itself was the only thing hiding it. Beyond the ridge stretch flat plains, vast and quiet. Scientists call them abyssal plains, the flattest places on Earth. Flatter, even, than any desert you've ever crossed. Strange creatures once drifted here, built for crushing pressure. Without water, that pressure is simply gone. A whole hidden ecosystem now lies exposed to open air. Coral reefs would be left high and dry too. Millions of species once called these reefs home. Now their whole world has simply dried into dust. Even the smallest tide pools would empty out. Whales that once swam these depths lie stranded in the mud. A strange silence falls where waves used to roar. Now look back toward the coast, where cities meet the sea. Every harbor town on Earth would lose its purpose. Cranes that once lifted cargo now hang over dry mud. Fishing boats tilt sideways, stranded where the tide once was. The fish market stands empty for the first time ever. Coastal economies built over centuries would stall overnight. Millions of jobs tied to the sea would simply vanish. And that's before the deeper consequences even begin. As the water falls, older secrets start to surface. Thousands of shipwrecks would lie scattered across the mud. Even the Titanic would rest on a bare, open slope. Explorers who searched for decades would simply walk there. Sunken planes, cars, and old treasure chests would appear too. History books would need rewriting almost overnight. But alongside wonder, there would be enormous grief too. These wrecks were resting places, not just relics. 90% of global trade travels by ship. Without oceans, none of those ships could move again. Supply chains carrying food, fuel, and medicine would freeze. Store shelves thousands of miles inland would empty fast. Entire nations depend on ships that can no longer sail. The ocean wasn't just water. It was the world's highway. Keep moving outward, and the scenery changes again. Ocean water carries enormous amounts of dissolved salt. When the water disappears, the salt has nowhere to go. It would form blinding white flats stretching for miles. Thicker than any desert crust you've ever imagined. Some regions would be buried under meters of it. Walking across it would feel like crossing snow in summer. A frozen-looking world under a blazing, cloudless sun. Now here's the part almost nobody expects. Nearly all rain on Earth begins the exact same way. Sunlight warms the ocean's surface, and water evaporates upward. That vapor rises, cools, and becomes the clouds you see. Without an ocean, that entire cycle simply stops. No evaporation, no clouds, no rain, anywhere. Picture a sky that never once looks stormy again. Not a drizzle, not a thunderstorm, nothing at all. Within weeks, the air itself would feel bone dry. Meteorologists would have almost nothing left to forecast. The most basic weather pattern on the planet, simply gone. And everything depending on rain would follow it down. Rivers are just rain, collected and set flowing. Cut off the rain, and the rivers slow first. Then the riverbeds crack into dry, dusty scars. Great lakes shrink into small, shallow puddles. Reservoirs behind dams empty out within months. Cities pulling drinking water from rivers face crisis. Families would start rationing water, drop by drop. The crisis on land always traces back to the sea. Farmers would feel this collapse before almost anyone else. Crops need consistent rainfall to grow at all. Wheat, rice, and corn fields would wither within a season. Irrigation systems depending on rivers would run dry too. Global food production would fall further every passing month. Grocery stores would start rationing what little remained. Families would learn to stretch every single meal. A crisis that began with missing rain now touched everyone. But rain and food are only part of the danger. Something even smaller would hit you far harder. Meet Penny Chisholm, a biologist at MIT. In the 1980s, she discovered something impossibly tiny. A microbe called Prochlorococcus, smaller than a speck of dust. It turned out to be one of the most abundant living things on Earth. Trillions of them drift through sunlit ocean water. Like tiny plants, they turn sunlight into oxygen. Together with other phytoplankton, they make half of your oxygen. Without an ocean, that invisible oxygen factory shuts down completely. Picture that shutdown happening in real, everyday life. At first, you might not notice anything different. Oxygen levels would fall slowly, over months and years. But every breath would gradually demand more effort. Athletes would struggle first, at high altitudes especially. Hospitals would see more patients with breathing trouble. Governments would begin rationing supplemental oxygen tanks. Something you'd never thought about now dominates the news. The smallest living things in the sea mattered the most. An organism you'll never see was quietly keeping you alive. There's a second invisible job the ocean was doing. Water heats up slowly and cools down slowly too. That slowness made the ocean the planet's thermostat. Without it, temperatures would swing wildly, day to night. Daytime heat could turn genuinely dangerous, fast. Nighttime cold could plunge far below anything familiar. Deserts already show you a preview of this effect. Now imagine that swing happening across the whole world. Farms, cities, and ecosystems would struggle to adapt in time. Life on Earth evolved around a stability the ocean quietly gave it. The ocean has one more hidden job, too. It absorbs roughly a quarter of all human carbon emissions. Without the ocean, that carbon would simply stay in the air. Greenhouse gases would build up even faster than before. The wild temperature swings you just saw would only get worse. One missing ocean would touch nearly every system on Earth. So how would people actually respond to all this? Not with panic forever. Eventually, with ingenuity. Many would move toward the coolest, lowest ground left. Polar ice caps would become an unlikely water source. Deep groundwater, untouched for centuries, would be carefully tapped. Entire cities would ration every liter like precious treasure. Communities would share what little they had left. Scientists and engineers would race to find new answers. Cooperation, more than fear, would define this new world. Because survival always seems to bring people closer together. To grow food, people would build entirely under glass. Sealed greenhouses would recycle every drop of water. Underground farms would use careful light instead of the sun. Cities would build domes just to control their own climate. Children would grow up learning to conserve water instinctively. Old habits would change faster than anyone expected. Humanity has adapted to hard changes before, again and again. But nobody would call this new way of life easy. Now picture zooming back out, far above it all. One name comes up again and again in ocean science. Sylvia Ohl spent her life exploring these very waters. She has a phrase people still repeat today. No blue, no green, she says. No ocean, no life. Every drop you imagine disappearing connects to everything else. The rain, the air, the temperature, all traced to one source. So look again at that same blue coastline from the start. The same family, the same pier, the same gulls circling above. Except now, you see it completely differently. That blue was never just scenery in the background. It was the quiet system that had been keeping you alive all along.